Title: Revised to match 10-minute. How WeWork burned $47 billion, the full 10-minute saga. $47 billion. That was the valuation of WeWork in January 2019. 12 months later, it was worth $2.3 billion. $44.7 billion destroyed in under a year. That is not a typo. That is the largest destruction of private company value in modern history. And the man responsible didn't go to jail. He walked away with a $1 billion exit package. This is the entire WeWork saga. Every grift, every red flag, every lesson you can use. In 10 minutes. Let me make that number real. If you had taken $10,000 and invested it in WeWork's Speak Round, you would have been left with roughly $10,000 and invested it in WeWork. Speak Round, you would have been left with roughly $400, not $4,000. $400, a 96% loss. But it's worse than that, because the people who told you it was worth $47 billion, they weren't amateurs. SoftBank, Benchmark, JP Morgan. The smartest money in the world looked at this company and said, yes, this is worth more than Ford, more than Kellogg's, more than Macy's, Best Buy, and Xerox combined. You would have trusted them. Any reasonable person would have. And that is the point. You're about to see exactly how a charismatic founder, a scripted narrative, and a financial system that rewards momentum over math convinced the world that a subleasing company was a tech unicorn. And by the end, you'll have a filter you can use tomorrow. I've read the full S1 filing, all 270 pages. I've watched every Adam Neumann interview from 2014 to 2020. I've cross-referenced the numbers against SoftBank's own internal valuations that later leaked. This isn't a summary of summaries. You're getting the signal. Here's a sentence that should terrify you. WeWork's business was office subleasing, but its S1 mentioned the word community 150 times and lease only 23 times. Adam Neumann didn't sell office space. He sold a religion. He walked on stage at company retreats while employees chanted his name. He required new hires to read a book he co-authored, a book that told them WeWork's mission was to elevate the world's consciousness. He once told investors that WeWork would solve the problem of children without parents. He wanted to create WeGrow, a chain of schools. When SoftBank's Masayoshi Son asked him who his competitor was, Neumann pointed at the ceiling and said, God. This wasn't eccentricity. It was the engine of the fraud. By making WeWork feel like a movement, Neumann justified a valuation reserved for high-margin software companies. Movements don't get valued on revenue multiples. They get valued on vision, and vision has no ceiling. The takeaway: when a founder uses the word community more than the word that describes what they actually sell, you are not looking at a business. You are looking at a story. Stories can raise billions. They cannot repay them. Bridge, but the story only works if the numbers eventually catch up, and WeWork's numbers never even tried. Pause. Put yourself in 2018. You're a SoftBank analyst. You open WeWork's books, and you notice something strange. The company has paid Adam Neumann $5.9 million for the trademark to the word we. Not the logo, not a patent, the word. Neumann had personally trademarked we, then sold it back to the company he founded, the company that was losing $1.9 billion a year for nearly $6 million. When the S1 came out and this became public, Neumann quietly returned the money. But the question nobody asked loudly enough: what kind of governance structure lets a CEO sell his own company the word we? Answer: the kind where the CEO has 20-to-1 voting rights and the board is stacked with friends who owe him their board seats. WeWork lost $1.9 billion in 2018 on revenue of $1.8 billion. Read that again. They spent $2 for every $1 they made. In any normal industry, that is called insolvency. But WeWork had invented a metric to hide this. They called it community-adjusted EBITDA. It stripped out rent, the single largest expense a subleasing company has. Imagine if McDonald's announced a burger-adjusted EBITDA that excluded the cost of beef. You'd laugh. SoftBank wired another $2 billion. The future lease obligations, the contracts WeWork had signed committing to pay rent for years, totaled $47.2 billion. Their future revenue if every desk was filled at optimistic rates? Not enough. The math never worked. Not in 2015, not in 2018, not ever. The takeaway: when a company invents a metric that removes its largest cost, close the deck, every single time. Bridge. But the party couldn't last. In August 2019, the S-1 was filed, and the world finally saw what SoftBank had been ignoring. The S-1 hit the SEC's website on August 14, 2019. Within 48 hours, it was being called the most absurd document in the history of public markets. Page 1 opened with a dedication to the energy of we. It got worse. The company disclosed that its CEO had leased buildings he personally owned back to the company he ran. He had taken out $700 million in personal loans, secured against WeWork stock that had no public price. His wife, Rebecca Neumann, was declared one of 3 people who would choose the next CEO if Adam died or was fired. She had no operating role in the business. She was the CEO's wife. And the community-adjusted numbers? The market rejected them instantly. The planned IPO valuation went from $47 billion to $20 billion to $10 billion to indefinitely postponed in 6 weeks. Adam Neumann was fired on September 24, 2019. But he didn't leave empty-handed. SoftBank paid Neumann $1.7 billion to leave the company he had just destroyed. $1.7 billion. A consulting fee of $185 million. A $500 million credit line. And SoftBank bought $970 million of his stock directly. You're paying your rent, buying your groceries, checking your budget. And Adam Neumann received over $1 billion as a severance for bankrupting a company. WeWork went public via SPAC in 2021 at a $9 billion valuation. By 2023, it filed for Chapter 11. The stock was canceled. Shareholders got nothing. The landlords who signed 15-year leases with WeWork are still fighting over the wreckage. The takeaway: governance rights matter more than valuation. Neumann's 20-to-1 voting shares made him unfireable until SoftBank paid him to leave. If you can't fire the CEO, you don't own the company. You own a lottery ticket. $47 billion to zero. A founder who sold the word "we" back to his own company. A metric that literally removed rent from the income statement of a subleasing business. And a payout that made Neumann a billionaire while shareholders got zero. Here's the one thing I want you to remember. The red flags weren't hidden. They were in the S-1. They were in the leases. They were in the word community adjusted. The smartest money in the world chose not to see them because the narrative was too good to question. The next time you hear about a company that isn't valued on revenue, that is a movement, not a business, that uses a metric you've never heard of, you now know exactly what to do. If this gave you one filter you'll actually use, subscribe so the next one shows up. One story, one lesson. That's the deal.